Some voices tell you the truth. Others tell you what you want to hear. But the most dangerous ones, they whisper in the dark, telling you things that feel right. That's how it started for me. A voice, a whisper, a simple suggestion. And before I knew it, I had blood on my hands. The worst part? I didn't even question it. Not until it was too late. This is my story. Listen closely. Because if you ever hear her voice, you might not realize what she is until it's too late. Welcome to eerie, short and scary stories, where nightmares take shape in the quietest corners of your mind. Tonight, I'll share with you a story of trust, manipulation, and the terrifying power of suggestion. This is my story. And if you listen carefully, you might just hear her voice too. When I first moved in, I didn't think much of it. The apartment was old but sturdy, the kind of place where the walls carried the weight of 1,000 conversations before us. It had a strange smell, something between dust and old wood, like a place that had been waiting too long for new life to fill it. But I didn't mind. It was cheap, and after months of crashing on couches and scrolling through endless rental listings, cheap was enough. Tim and Jerry were identical twins, the kind that made you do a double take every time they entered the room. They didn't dress alike or try to confuse people, but there was something unsettling about how they moved, always in sync, always knowing exactly what the other was thinking without needing to say a word. Tim spoke more, Jerry less. Their voices were the same, their laughter identical, and sometimes, late at night, I could hear them talking through the walls, their whispers blending together like a single voice answering itself. Then there was Katie. Katie was different. She wasn't like the twins. Where they were quiet and awkward, Katie filled every room she entered. She spoke like she had been waiting her whole life for someone to ask her opinion. And people did. Not because she demanded attention. She never had to. She was the kind of person you agreed with before you even realized what you were agreeing to. It wasn't just the way she spoke, but the certainty behind it. When Katie told a story, it became truth. And when she asked a question, it wasn't really a question. It was an invitation to believe her version of reality. At first, everything was fine. Better than fine. We joked, we drank, we shared stories. It felt like the kind of effortless friendship people spend years trying to build. I liked them. I liked the way Tim and Jerry finished each other's sentences, how Katie could turn a dull afternoon into something that felt important. I liked how easy it all was. But then Katie started talking about justice. Not in the way most people do. It wasn't about laws or politics or fairness. It was about something deeper. Something personal. You ever think about what people really deserve? She asked one night. I shrugged. I guess. Most people never get what they deserve, she said. They either take more than they've earned or spend their whole lives getting walked over. She tilted her head, watching me. Which one do you think you are? It was the kind of question that didn't need an answer. And yet, I found myself thinking about it long after the conversation ended. Katie had a way of making you question yourself. She had a way of making you see things differently. It started small. A comment here, a joke there. The kind of things that seemed harmless at first. But Katie never said anything by accident. She would point things out that I hadn't noticed before. How Tim always left his dishes in the sink but never cleaned up after himself. How Jerry borrowed things and never returned them. How people in general, took advantage of kindness. It's just how the world works, she'd say. Some people take. Some people get taken from. She wasn't angry about it. That's what made it so convincing. She spoke like she was simply stating a fact, something undeniable. And once she said it, it was impossible to unsee. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way people cut in line at the store. The way strangers pushed past me on the sidewalk without so much as an apology. The way Tim never thanked me when I covered his share of the rent that one time. Katie would just smile. See, you're starting to get it. It was never about hate. Never about bitterness. It was about balance. That's what she called it. The world is unbalanced, she told me. And sometimes, it takes a little push to set things right. I nodded. Because it made sense. Because she made it make sense. And that was the problem. It started with a name. Julie. I hadn't thought about her in months. Not really. The sting of it had faded, or at least I told myself it had. People cheat. It happens. I moved on. At least, I thought I had. But then Katie said her name, and suddenly, it was like I could hear Julie laughing in my ear again. See her smile, feel that gnawing hollow feeling in my gut that had kept me up at night. I ran into her today, Katie said casually. She didn't even look guilty. I almost rolled my eyes. Why would she? She's not the type to regret anything. Exactly. Something about the way she said it made me pause. There was something expectant in her voice, like she was waiting for me to catch up to whatever thought was running through her head. I didn't ask. I should have. You know she's still doing it, right? Katie said. It wasn't just you. I scoffed. Yeah, well, some people never change. She's dangerous. I laughed. Because it was funny. Ridiculous, really. Julie wasn't a good person, but she wasn't dangerous. She wasn't going around robbing banks or running people off the road. She was just selfish. That was it. But Katie didn't laugh. She just looked at me, calm, steady. She won't stop hurting people, Daryl. You know that. The way she said it made my skin prickle. I shook my head. It's not like that. Katie leaned in, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. What if it was? What if she does this to someone else? Someone who actually loves her? Someone who won't recover the way you did? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words never came. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Julie didn't just hurt me. She made me feel small. She made me doubt myself, made me believe that maybe I wasn't enough. That kind of hurt lingers. It sticks in your ribs and makes a home there. And if she did it to me, she'd do it to someone else. She already was. She doesn't deserve to keep getting away with it, Katie said. You know that, don't you? I swallowed hard. She wasn't asking. She was telling me. I don't remember deciding. Not really. There wasn't a moment where I said to myself, yes, this is happening. It was more like a slow shift, like stepping into water without realizing how deep it is until it's up to your chest. And then, suddenly, I was there. It didn't feel real at first. Even when it was happening, even when my hands were shaking and my breath was coming too fast, there was a part of me that thought, this isn't real. This isn't happening. But then it was over. Julie was there. And then she wasn't. Just like that. I expected to feel something. Guilt. Panic. Horror. Instead, there was only silence. Katie was the one who pulled me out of it. I felt her hand on my shoulder. Warm. Steady. When I finally looked at her, she was smiling. Not a big, toothy grin. Not triumphant. Just pleased. Like she had known all along that this was how it would go. See? She murmured. You did the right thing. I nodded. Because at that moment, it felt like I had. It's strange how quickly something can become normal. The first time, I hesitated. The second time, I barely did. By the third, it was routine. Marcus was next. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but the memory of his betrayal still sat in the back of my mind like a bad taste that wouldn't go away. We grew up together, trusted each other, made promises we never kept. And when I needed him most, he threw me aside like I was nothing. He'll do it again, Daryl, Katie said, voice smooth as silk. You're stopping a snake before it strikes. I wanted to believe she was wrong, but the more she spoke, the clearer it became. The logic was undeniable. Marcus didn't change. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even thinking about what he had done. People like him never do. I didn't feel the same hesitation I did with Julie. If anything, I felt prepared. I knew what needed to be done. And I did it. After Marcus, the guilt came slower. The doubts were easier to ignore. Then came Yuri Melosh. A conman. A thief. The kind of person who tricked old women out of their life savings and laughed about it. There wasn't a single good thing to be said about him, no redeeming quality to hold on to. The world would be better without him. That one was easy. Pritchett Ricketts. A rival. A man who had gone out of his way to ruin me in business. He made sure every door was locked before I even got a chance to knock. He lied. He cheated. He stole. And for what? So he could sit on a pile of money and feel good about himself? Katie told me it was justice. That this was balance. I believed her. At some point, I stopped resisting. Katie would tell me what needed to be done, and I would do it. And each time, the world made more sense. There was a pattern to it, an order. Actions had consequences. Every name on Katie's lips was another problem solved, another weight lifted from the world. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about setting things right. But there was one thing I couldn't shake. Katie never seemed affected. I would sit there afterward, still catching my breath, fingers still shaking, waiting for something. Some sign that she felt it too. But she never did. There was never doubt in her voice. Never hesitation in her words. I told myself it was because she was stronger than me. Smarter than me. That she saw the bigger picture. But a small voice in the back of my head kept whispering something else. Something I wasn't ready to hear. It was over. No more names. No more reasons. No more justifications. The world was balanced now. Everything was quiet. And yet, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Katie's face. That smile. The way she would tilt her head just slightly, watching me. Studying me. Like she was waiting for something. I told myself it was nothing. My mind playing tricks. Guilt, maybe. Leftover adrenaline. But then I started noticing other things. She was always there. Always. No matter the time of day, no matter where I went. If I turned around too fast, she was already looking at me. If I woke up in the middle of the night, she was sitting on the edge of my bed, hands folded neatly in her lap, staring like she knew what I was dreaming about. I tried to shake it off. Tried to tell myself I was being ridiculous. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. It clung to my skin like sweat, refusing to let go. One night, I found myself sitting at my desk, scrolling through old photos. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed a reminder that life existed before all of this. That there was a time before the blood. I found one from the day I moved in. Tim and Jerry, standing in front of the apartment, grinning. The moving truck in the background. Boxes stacked on the porch. No Katie. I went back further. Pictures from their college years. Their childhood. Birthdays. Holidays. No Katie. It didn't make sense. She told me she had known them forever. That they grew up together, inseparable. So where was she? I felt sick. My hands were shaking. The next morning, I asked them. Casual. A joke, almost. Where was Katie in all those old pictures? They just stared at me. Who? I laughed. Waited for the joke to land. Waited for them to smirk, to roll their eyes, to call me an idiot for even asking. But their faces never changed. Who is Katie? Something cold crawled up my spine. My mouth went dry. I turned to look over my shoulder. She was standing there, smiling. I tore my apartment apart. Old bills, emails, group chats. I combed through every piece of proof that Katie had ever existed. There had to be something. A message, a lease agreement, a tagged photo, anything. Nothing. Her number wasn't in my phone. There were no texts, no call logs. Not a single mention of her name in any conversation I had with Tim and Jerry. It was like she had never been there at all. I searched deeper. Bank statements. Rent receipts. The original lease. 3 names. Just 3. Mine. Tim's. Jerry's. No Katie. My head felt light. My fingers were numb. The room spun, and I had to brace myself against the desk. That wasn't possible. I had talked to her. Laughed with her. She sat across from me at dinner. She whispered in my ear. She told me what had to be done. I turned slowly, my breath shaking. She was there. Standing in the doorway. Smiling. "You're ready now, Daryl," she whispered. And suddenly everything made sense. She never convinced me to do anything. She never had to. Because Katie wasn't real. She was my voice. My own thoughts. My own darkness, given a name, a face, a presence that felt real. And now, she was looking at me like a proud teacher watching a student finally understand the lesson. "You see it now, don't you?" she said, taking a step closer. "You always knew. You just didn't want to admit it." I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I backed away. "No," I muttered. You were there. I heard you. I saw you." She tilted her head, amused. "Did you?" Memories came flooding back, crashing over me all at once. Every conversation. Every whispered promise. Every moment I thought I was following her lead. It was always my voice. My own justification. Katie had never existed. I had done it all on my own. I don't know what's real anymore. I sit here, trying to piece it together, trying to make sense of it. But no matter how much I turn it over in my head, I can't find the truth. Was Katie ever real? Was she ever flesh and blood, standing beside me? Or was she just a voice, my own voice, telling me what I wanted to hear? I tell myself she was never there. That it was all in my head. That I was the one who made the decisions, who pulled the trigger, who watched the light fade from their eyes. But then, why do I still hear her? She whispers to me when it's quiet. Just a soft murmur in the back of my mind, like a song I can't forget. "You did the right thing, Daryl," she says. "You're not done yet." I close my eyes, press my hands against my ears, but it doesn't help. She's still there, her voice curling around my thoughts like smoke. I tell myself I won't listen, that I won't do it again. But I can feel it. The itch. The hunger. The need. And deep down, I know the truth. Katie was never real. But she is now. If you ever hear a voice, soft, familiar, slipping between your thoughts like it belongs there, be careful. It won't shout. It won't beg. It won't sound like something foreign, something wrong. No. It will sound reasonable, gentle, like a friend. And that's the trick, isn't it? The most dangerous things don't force their way in. They wait. They let you open the door. You'll think it's your conscience, your better judgment, maybe even your own voice guiding you down the right path. But how can you be sure? How can you know, with absolute certainty, that the thought was yours to begin with? Because once you listen, once you act, you can't go back. And that voice, it never leaves. It lingers. It waits. It watches. So if you ever find yourself reasoning, justifying, convincing yourself of something you never would have considered before, stop. Listen carefully. Because if you're lucky, it's just you. And if you're not, well, you'll find out soon enough. If you enjoyed this tale, subscribe for more stories that will keep you awake at night. But be warned, some whispers are best left unheard.
Something called my twins from the closet, and now they won't stop whispering 60 in their sleep. I think I lost them the moment I hit that number. Where are you watching this from? Just curious how far this story will travel. It started like any other rainy afternoon. The sky had been grumbling since noon, and by 3 o'clock, the clouds finally gave up holding back. Rain tapped gently on the kitchen window while I was trying to finish folding a basket of laundry that had been sitting there, mocking me, for 2 days. The kind of afternoon where the air smells like wet concrete, and the only plans you have involve staying dry and figuring out how to entertain 2 restless 5-year-olds without handing over the tablet. Jordan and Casey had already torn through every puzzle, every block set, and the remains of a pillow fort now sagged sadly in the living room. That's when Casey came in, socks sliding across the hardwood floor, her curls bouncing like she'd just invented the game of the century. "Let's play hide and seek," she declared, arms stretched wide like it was a revelation. Jordan followed, dragging a stuffed dinosaur by the tail, already nodding like they'd been plotting it together. Before I could answer, Casey grabbed my hand and said something that made me pause, just a little. "Count to 60, Mommy. Exactly 60. Or you lose. I laughed. What happens if I mess up? Do I get banned from the next round? Jordan tilted his head, serious as a tiny judge. No, you just lose. They ran off before I could press them further, giggling and whispering to each other as they vanished around the corner. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, staring at the hallway they'd disappeared down. It wasn't the game that gave me pause. It was that line. Exactly 60. It wasn't how they usually played. They'd never said that before. But I shrugged it off. Kids say weird things all the time. Last week, Casey tried to convince me that her reflection in the bathroom mirror wasn't really her. They're 5. Reality is more like a suggestion to them. Still, I sat on the couch and began counting out loud, slowly, letting each number stretch out across the room. 1, 2, 3. The rain kept falling. The laundry stayed folded. And for a few brief minutes, it was just the sound of counting and rain, layered over the quiet thrum of a house that felt, just for a moment, too still. I opened my eyes at 60, and the house felt wrong. You know how homes have their own rhythms? The little sounds you don't even notice until they stop? That was the first thing I noticed. The silence. There should have been footsteps. Whispers. The distant scuffle of socks across floors. Laughter, at least a giggle or two. Instead, there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft drip of rain outside. Even the air felt like it was holding its breath. I called their names. Light at first, playful, still in the spirit of the game. No answer. I stood up and walked through the kitchen. The lights flickered once, just a quick blink, like someone had flipped the switch halfway and changed their mind. I paused. Waited. Nothing happened. The light held steady. Okay, I called again. I'm coming to find you. Still trying to sound cheerful. Still pretending this was all part of the game. The living room was empty. Couch cushions still piled up from the earlier fort. The hallway. No giggles. No tiny footsteps rushing to a new hiding spot. The bathroom door was wide open. Closet 2. I checked behind the curtains, under the dining table, even inside the toy chest. Nothing. That's when I noticed the front door. It was open. Just slightly, but enough to let in a cold thread of air that curled around my ankles and made me stop breathing. The doorknob was damp from the rain. I stepped closer, pushed it all the way open. The front steps glistened, dark and wet, and just beyond them, I saw the footprints. Small. Barefoot. 2 sets. Only going in. That was the moment. That exact moment, standing there, staring at those wet little prints on my floor, realizing there were none going out, that was when I called the police. Officer Daly showed up fast. Too fast. I swear it hadn't even been 5 minutes since the call. One moment I was pacing the entryway, phone still in hand, trying to decide if I should check the backyard, and the next, I saw the cruiser pulling up through the rain. No siren, no rush, just the steady crawl of someone who already knew exactly where they were going. He got out smiling. That same smile he wore every year at the school safety talks. John Daly. Local. Friendly. The kind of guy who gave kids stickers and carried dog treats in his pocket. I didn't even realize I was crying until he handed me a tissue and said, "It's okay, I've got kids. We'll find Jordan and Casey." I didn't remember saying their names. I must have. I had to have. Maybe I said them when I was on the phone. Maybe dispatch passed it along. That's what I told myself. I kept repeating that as he gave me a firm, reassuring squeeze on the shoulder and stepped inside. "Let me take a quick look through the house," he said, already moving past me. "You stay here. I'll check all the usual hiding spots." I wanted to follow him, but something in his tone made me stop. Not the words, those were all right, but the rhythm of it. He said it like a line he'd rehearsed. Like something he'd said before. Recently. I watched him go upstairs. His boots made soft, heavy thumps on the carpeted steps. I stood there, unsure whether to scream or just crumble. That's when I saw the drawings. They hadn't been there earlier. I'm sure of it. They were crookedly taped to the fridge, 3 of them. Crayon on printer paper. 2 children, stick figures with scribbled hair, stood on either side of something tall. Something towering. No face, just a black scribble where the head should be. Long arms that stretched to the ground. All 3 were holding hands. And above them, in that unmistakable shaky handwriting only a child could manage, were 2 words. We promised. Then there was a knock at the back door. Not the front. The back. No one ever used it. Not family, not delivery people. I didn't even keep the porch light on. It caught me so off guard I just froze, halfway to the stairs. 3 short knocks. Then 1 long one. Like it had a pattern. I opened it without thinking. Todd was standing there, soaked through, no umbrella, no jacket, just a faded t-shirt and gym shorts. His face was pale, wet with rain and sweat, and his eyes were wide in a way that made my stomach turn. He didn't say hello. Didn't ask if everything was okay. He just said, I saw someone in your house. His voice cracked when he said it. He pointed toward his own window. From my kitchen. I looked up and I thought maybe one of the kids got out, but it was someone tall. They were just standing there. Watching. And the lights flickered right after, like they do when the microwave's on and someone's using the dryer at the same time. I tried to process it, tried to string it together with everything else, but nothing made sense anymore. My eyes drifted up the stairs. Officer Daly had been up there too long. Just as I turned to call out, something crashed. It wasn't a small sound. Not a book falling. Not a drawer closing. It was loud enough to shake the wall next to me, like furniture tipping or glass breaking. Todd flinched. I felt my legs move before I realized I was walking toward the staircase. That's when Daly called down. His voice was chipper. Relaxed. Like he was enjoying himself. It's fine. I found something. He didn't say what. He didn't ask for help. Just that line. I reached for the railing, and that's when I heard the whispering. It came from the baby monitor. It had been dead quiet for years, no batteries, just sitting there in the hallway like a leftover relic from the diaper days. But now it was on, glowing faintly. 2 voices. Soft. Familiar. She didn't stop at 60. He's still in here. I ran upstairs. The air changed the moment I reached the landing. It wasn't just colder, it was as if the warmth had been sucked out of the entire house. My breath came out in shallow clouds, even though it was still raining outside, still early spring. The lights overhead were dimmer than they should have been, like someone had turned the brightness way down but forgot to tell me. I moved toward their room, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and froze. The closet door was moving. Slowly. Creaking open all on its own. I stepped closer, every nerve screaming at me to run the other way, but something I can't explain, pulled me forward. Inside, standing perfectly still, was Officer Daly. His smile was wide, too wide. It didn't reach his eyes. His eyes, they didn't blink. Not once. They just stared at me like empty holes, endless black pits that swallowed the dim light whole. Found them, he said. But it wasn't his voice. It was deeper. Hollow. Echoing. I wanted to back away, but I couldn't. I was rooted there, trapped between disbelief and fear. Behind him, in the dark space of the closet, 2 figures stood. Pale. Motionless. My twins. Jordan and Casey. Their eyes were open but blank. They whispered in unison, voices cold and strange, as if coming from far away but right next to me. We finished the game. He said we belonged to him now. I screamed. I don't even remember pulling the trigger. One moment I was standing there, frozen, and the next, a loud bang shattered the silence. The sound ripped through the house, followed by the crash of something heavy falling downstairs. Then Todd's voice, yelling, panicked, frantic, completely unrecognizable. Everything around me blurred, like I was underwater, distant but aware. I can't say how long it lasted. Minutes, hours. Time stopped. The chaos folded in on itself. And then, nothing. I was found hours later, curled up and catatonic inside the closet. The air was stale, cold. My skin felt numb, and I couldn't move or speak. Officer Daly was gone. No sign of him anywhere. His car sat outside, engine still running, lights glowing faintly through the rain. The radio inside was on, but instead of voices or static, it played only children's laughter. Soft. Innocent. But the sound felt wrong, like it belonged to another world. When the twins were found, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They were safe. Or so we thought. But there was something off. Something no one could explain. Their eyes, empty. Not quite alive. Their smiles didn't reach their faces anymore. And sometimes, when the house was silent, I swear I hear them whisper again. We belong to him now. They don't sleep anymore. At least, not like they used to. Casey will sit for hours, just staring at the blank wall in their room. No blinking, no moving, like something inside her has gone quiet and refuses to wake up. It's the kind of silence that fills a room and makes the air feel thick, like waiting for a storm that never arrives. Jordan, on the other hand, talks. But not to me, or anyone else. He talks to someone who isn't there. He calls him 60. At first, I thought it was some imaginary friend, a normal childhood thing. But the way Jordan's eyes follow empty space, the way his smile twitches just a little when he looks at that spot, it's like he's really there. And it's not friendly. Both of them keep drawing. Over and over, they scribble the same figure. A tall, dark shape with no face. No eyes. No mouth. Just emptiness. That figure haunts every drawing, every paper scattered around the house like a silent warning. Doctors run every test they can think of. They say the twins are fine, physically healthy, no signs of illness or trauma. But anyone who looks at them closely can see it. They aren't the kids I knew. Not really. There's something else living inside them now, something quiet and cold. Then, one night, I find a drawing hidden under Jordan's bed. I pick it up with shaking hands, already knowing what I'll see. It's a picture of me, standing inside the closet. But the eyes, they're scratched out. Not just erased. Scratched out, angry and desperate. Like someone wanted to erase me from the world completely. And I wonder, who did that drawing? And what part of me is already gone? I used to think I lost them at 60. Like that moment when I opened my eyes and everything fell apart. But now, I'm not so sure. I think I let something in. Something I didn't see coming, or maybe refused to see. Something that waited for the perfect moment while I was too distracted to notice. Last night, I heard it again. The whispering. Faint at first, barely there, like a breath against my ear. But then it grew clearer, louder. And this time, it wasn't just the twins' voices. It said my name. Soft and slow, like a promise or a warning. 60. 60. Mommy lost. Her turn now. The words stuck with me. Cold and quiet. Like the echo of a game that never really ends. Has anyone else heard of this game? Please, if you ever do, don't count out loud. You don't want to be next. Do you think the twins ever really came back? Or did something else take their place? Have you ever played a game as a kid that just didn't feel right? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every one. This is Eerie Short and Scary Stories. Sleep tight, if you still can. Have you ever looked into a mirror and not recognized the person staring back? Because I haven't stopped seeing something else, and it's tearing my life apart. This started small. A little weird, like a flicker in the corner of my eye. But then, things got wrong. Not just strange, but terrifying. And it all began with the mirrors. Where are you watching this from? Just curious how far this story will travel. I used to think my life was pretty ordinary. Nothing much out of the usual. I had a steady job, the kind where you clock in, get your work done, and clock out without too much drama. I lived in a small apartment, the kind with just enough space to feel comfortable but not so much that I'd get lost in it. I had Mar, my girlfriend, who was easy to talk to and the kind of person who could make a bad day seem bearable. We weren't those perfect couples you see in movies or on Instagram. Just two people trying to get through their days without messing things up too badly. My routine was simple. Wake up, shower, grab a quick breakfast, then head to work. Most days, the same route, the same faces, the same coffee order at the corner shop. I liked the predictability of it all. It felt safe. It felt normal. Maybe even boring, but I liked that, honestly. Stability had a way of making the chaos of the world fade a little. But then, the first things started to feel off. At first, I thought it was just me being tired. You know how stress can play tricks on your mind. I was putting in longer hours at work, trying to keep everything steady, keep Mar happy, keep myself together. So, when I first noticed the little oddities, I wrote them off. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe I was imagining it all. Like the way the mirror in my bathroom seemed to blink. I swear it did. Not a literal blink, but there was a flicker, a brief crackle, like the reflection wasn't quite matching up with me. Sometimes I'd catch my eyes looking darker than usual. Or my smile wouldn't quite line up with the way I was feeling inside. I told myself it was just a trick of the light or my imagination running wild after a long day. Then there was the clock on my wall. It was old, the kind with a loud tick that filled the room. One morning, it skipped forward by 10 minutes. I didn't notice it right away, but when I did, I chalked it up to a dead battery or some mechanical glitch. But then it happened again. And again. Time didn't seem to flow the way it was supposed to anymore. Minutes would vanish or stretch out. I'd catch myself wondering if I was late for work when, in reality, I had plenty of time. Mar tried to keep me grounded. She'd laugh and say I was overthinking, that I needed a break, maybe some sleep. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to normal. But every little thing kept piling up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the world around me was starting to slip away from me. Like the edges of my life were fraying, and I didn't know how to hold them together. I kept waiting for it to stop, for things to go back to how they were. But the cracks kept showing up, small at first, but they spread faster than I could fix them. And I realized, maybe the problem wasn't me being tired or stressed. Maybe something else was changing everything. But what? I had no idea. And honestly, that scared me more than anything. It started with the mirrors. At first, it was nothing I could put my finger on, just a flicker, like a glitch in a video. But it was enough to make me pause. I'd catch my reflection out of the corner of my eye, and for a brief second, something felt wrong. My eyes looked too dark, like they were missing the light that usually bounced off them. Or my smile didn't quite match the expression I was wearing. It was off, like the reflection was a split second behind me, or maybe ahead, but not quite right. I tried to ignore it, blaming tiredness or the way the bathroom light flickered now and then. But then the flickers started to happen more often. I'd look into the mirror and, for a moment, it felt like the air around it dropped in temperature. A coldness would settle near the glass, and I swear I could smell something metallic, faint but unmistakable, like the tang of blood or rust. It wasn't constant, but every time it happened, it left this weird, sticky feeling in the back of my throat, like I'd swallowed something sharp. The reflections themselves began to act strange. One night, I stared long enough to realize my reflection wasn't just off, it was doing things on its own. My eyes shifted before I did, and my smile twisted into something that wasn't mine. It was subtle at first, but then the reflection's gaze felt heavy, like it was watching me instead of mirroring me. It made my skin crawl in a way I hadn't felt since I was a kid hearing stories that scared me senseless. I remember one night in particular. I went into the bathroom, ready to brush my teeth, and when I looked up into the mirror, I didn't see my room behind me. Instead, the glass was pure black. No reflection, no light, just a dark void where everything should have been. I blinked and rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I'd just been too tired or it was some trick of the light. But it stayed black for a full minute before flickering back to normal. That moment stayed with me, more than I wanted to admit. After that, every time I passed a mirror, I hesitated. I felt like something was waiting there, just beneath the surface. The cold air, the metallic smell, they followed me, even when I wasn't near any glass. It was like the mirrors were windows to something else, something I wasn't supposed to see. And the worst part? I couldn't stop looking. There was this pull, a curiosity mixed with fear, like I knew my reflection was trying to tell me something. Or maybe warn me. I started checking every reflective surface, windows, phone screens, even spoons, anything that could catch my image. And in every one, there was a flicker, a shadow, a hint that the world I knew wasn't quite right. It felt like the mirrors were peeling back layers, showing me cracks in reality I never wanted to find. That's when I began to wonder if the problem wasn't just with the mirrors. Maybe I was slipping too, falling out of sync with my own reflection. Or worse, maybe the thing in the glass was slipping in. Either way, I knew one thing for sure. Something was wrong, and the mirrors were the first place it started to show. After the mirrors started acting strange, the clocks weren't far behind. At first, it was small things, a minute or two lost here and there. I'd glance up, expecting to see a certain time, only to find the hands had jumped backward, or sometimes frozen completely. There was this weird feeling like time itself was bending around me, slipping through my fingers no matter how hard I tried to hold on. I'd check my phone, then look at the clock on the wall, then the oven timer, and none of them matched. It was like reality was glitching, but only in my little world. It didn't stop with time. The neighborhood, the place I thought I knew like the back of my hand, started changing too. Cars I'd seen parked in the same spots for years would be different colors in the morning. I'd swear one day a red sedan was bright blue the next. I asked a neighbor once, but they just gave me a strange look and said, "That's been blue forever." Faces of people I'd greeted every day started looking unfamiliar, their smiles too wide, their eyes cold and distant. They moved with this odd, jerky rhythm, like puppets trying to imitate human behavior. It made me want to look away, but I couldn't. The city itself began to feel strange. The streets seemed longer, the alleys darker. Shadows stretched across walls at odd angles, twisting in ways that didn't match the sun's position. There was a faint whisper carried in the wind, soft, almost like someone calling my name, but just beyond the edge of hearing. I'd freeze in place, hoping it was nothing but the wind playing tricks. But it wasn't. The whispers came back, louder sometimes, and always when I was alone. I started questioning my own mind. Was I imagining all this? Was it exhaustion? Was I just losing my grip on reality? I wanted to believe I was just tired, that everything would go back to normal if I got some sleep. But then, one night, I caught something that shook me to my core. I was standing in my apartment, turning around slowly, and there it was, me. Or at least, someone who looked like me, standing behind me. It didn't blink, didn't move. Its eyes were completely empty, like deep black holes staring right through me. It was watching, and I felt frozen, like I couldn't even breathe. I wanted to shout, to run, but my body refused to respond. That moment changed everything. It was proof that whatever was happening wasn't just in my head. Something had crossed over into my world, and it was standing right behind me, waiting. I didn't know what it wanted or how to make it stop. All I knew was that I couldn't turn my back on it, because it was already inside my life, inside my reality, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be free again. It wasn't just the mirrors or the clocks anymore. It started to seep into the one thing I thought I could trust, my relationship with March. At first, it was little things. Conversations we should have had, things I was sure we talked about, vanished from her memory as if they never happened. I'd mention plans we made, jokes we shared, moments that felt solid in my mind, only to be met with confusion or silence. She'd look at me like I was the one losing it. The worst was the gaps. Months where I could swear we'd been close, where I thought we were building something real, simply disappeared. I'd ask her about those times, and she'd shrug, or say she didn't remember. Sometimes, she looked at me like I was speaking a different language, like the past we shared had been erased from her mind. It crushed me. I started wondering if I was alone in remembering, like I was trapped in a loop where only I was aware of the distance growing between us. The confusion gnawed at me. I wanted to believe this was just stress, or maybe a trick my brain was playing because of everything else going on. But it wasn't. It was something else. Something that made me question every word, every smile, every moment I thought was real. I became paranoid. I'd hold onto my phone, my notes, anything that could prove what we'd shared was true. Yet no matter how hard I tried, the pieces didn't fit. Mar's doubts grew too, and that made her pull away even more. I remember one night in particular. There was an argument, or maybe it was just a desperate conversation. I asked her why she was acting so distant, why she seemed like a stranger. She told me she was scared, that she didn't recognize me anymore. She said, "I don't know who you are, and I don't know what this is." Hearing that broke something inside me. I tried to reach her, to make her see what I was seeing, but it felt like I was shouting into an empty room. Then there were the mirrors again. I pointed out one, cracked and old, and told her about the flickers, the strange things I'd been seeing. But she just looked at it and said nothing. After that night, she never spoke of the mirrors again. It was like I was the only one haunted by those reflections. That silence between us was heavier than any argument, thicker than any fear. I wanted so badly to hold on to what was left of us, but I felt like I was losing ground every day. The memories I had of Mar, the warmth in her laugh, the way her hand fit in mine, were slipping away. And I was terrified that soon, I wouldn't remember them at all. Or worse, that she wouldn't remember me. One night, standing there with that cracked mirror between us, I realized something was wrong in a way I couldn't fix. The mirror didn't show the cracks anymore. It was just clear glass. I told Mar, but she just looked away. She never brought it up again, and neither did I. That silence was louder than any ghost, and it left me wondering. How do you fight something when even the person you love refuses to see it? It all came crashing down one night, when I was staring into that cracked mirror again. The same one I thought I knew, the one that had been showing me glimpses of something I couldn't quite understand. But this time, it was different. The reflection wasn't mine, or at least, not the me I knew. It was darker, twisted, like something trapped beneath the surface, waiting for a moment to break free. The air around me suddenly turned cold, biting into my skin like sharp glass. There was that metallic smell again, the scent that had been creeping into every corner of my apartment, seeping into my clothes and my hair, and I swear, it was thickening, getting stronger until it filled my lungs. I tried to breathe through it, but it choked me. The sounds in the room warped. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clocks, they bent and stretched, like some terrible echo that was no longer familiar. Colors began to bleed, the edges of everything smudging and melting like wet paint. The lights flickered, and shadows danced around me, but not like they did before. These shadows moved with purpose, closing in, swallowing the space between me and the mirror. Then, the glass shattered. Not a slow crack, but an explosion of shards that flew in every direction. It was deafening and silent all at once. The sharp edges glittered in the dim light like stars fallen from the sky. I could feel the shards cutting into me, not just on my skin, but deeper, inside my mind. In that moment, everything felt like it was breaking apart. My memories, my thoughts, the thin line between what was real and what wasn't. I couldn't tell if I was awake or trapped in some twisted nightmare that refused to end. There was a part of me that wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen, paralyzed by the horror of seeing the pieces of my life shattered all around me. I realized then that the shards of my life aren't just broken, they're haunted. Every fragment holds a shadow, a whisper of something I can't escape. And even as the mirror lay in pieces, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something I couldn't yet understand. What happened next? I can't say for sure. Some parts of that night are already lost to me. But the feeling, the terror, the weight of those broken pieces, that's something I carry with me every day. It's a quiet madness that waits in the silence, watching, always waiting. I don't really know what's real anymore. It's hard to say if anything I see is truly mine. My reflection, my memories, even my own thoughts feel slippery, like they're shifting just beyond my grasp. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection in a mirror, it doesn't feel like me looking back. It feels like someone, or something, staring through me, watching, waiting. I find myself wondering if the world around me is the same one I thought I knew, or if it's just a copy, a fading image of something lost. What if what we call reality is just a fragile layer stretched thin over something much deeper? Maybe we're all looking in the wrong direction, mistaking shadows for truth. And those mirrors, every single one, have become a question I can't answer. Every time I glance at one, I pause, because I'm not sure if I'm seeing myself trapped inside, or if something else is trapped on the other side, watching me instead. What would you do if you couldn't trust your own reflection? If every familiar face started to feel like a stranger, and the world you knew slipped quietly away? Maybe, somewhere just beneath the surface of what we see and touch, there's something waiting. Something patient. Something that blurs the line between what's inside and what's out. So, when you look in the mirror tonight, ask yourself, who's really looking back? Has anyone else experienced something like this? Strange reflections. Time slipping away? Let me know where you're watching from and what you think is really going on. Because sometimes, the scariest place isn't outside. It's staring right back at you. 3 weeks ago, the government issued a death certificate in my name. But I'm still alive. I think. Before I tell you what happened, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Because if what I'm about to share has happened to anyone else, I need to know I'm not the only one. It started like any other boring Tuesday. I was at home, trying to fix the coffee machine that sputtered like it was dying a slow death, while my wife was in the other room, scrolling through emails. The kind of day where nothing happens and you hope it stays that way. I wasn't expecting anything more than a bitter cup of coffee and maybe a trip to the hardware store. I had no reason to think my entire life would be flipped upside down before lunch. Then the phone rang. At first, I didn't think much of it. She answered like normal, but her tone changed fast. I could hear it from the kitchen. You know that voice people get when they're confused and trying to stay polite, but their stomach has already started to turn? That was the voice. She kept saying, "No, that's impossible. He's right here. What do you mean he was on that flight?" And I just stood there, holding a dripping coffee filter, waiting for her to explain. When she finally hung up, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Like she was trying to match the face she saw with the voice on the phone. She said my name, slow and unsure, then told me the airline called. They said I was on a plane that went down this morning. No survivors. My name was on the list. Passport matched. Seat 14A. I laughed at first. I thought it was some glitch. Identity theft or a sick prank. But then the doorbell rang, and everything changed. 2 officers were standing there, serious as death. One of them held a manila folder. The other looked at me, then at my wife, and asked if he could come inside. They said they were there to inform her of a loss. My loss. The husband who died in the crash. They weren't expecting me to be standing in the hallway, barefoot, with coffee grounds on my hands. I expected confusion. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe they'd apologize and say someone got it wrong. But they didn't. The one holding the folder stared at me like I'd grown a second head. He stepped back, just once, and whispered something to the other officer. I didn't catch the words, but I saw the way his eyes flicked toward my chest. Like he was checking to see if I was breathing. And then it happened. My wife let out this sound, somewhere between a gasp and a scream, and pointed at me with both hands. I turned to look behind me, thinking maybe someone else was there. But it was just me. Only me. She said in this shaky whisper, "You glitched." That was her word. Glitched. Like my face shimmered or skipped a frame, like I was a bad signal trying to stay visible. I laughed again. Nervous. Too loud. I told her she was just in shock, maybe still processing what they'd told her. But she wouldn't look at me. She kept backing away, like I was radioactive. And the officers didn't move. That was the moment everything started to unravel. I didn't panic. Not yet. I figured if I could just show them proof, real, solid proof, I could clear this up. So I handed the officers my ID. License, bank cards, even an old library card I hadn't used in years. They examined them like museum pieces. One of them scanned the back of my driver's license with some little gadget on his belt. He looked at the other and just gave a small shake of the head. I told them to take my fingerprints. Hell, take a blood sample if they needed. I had nothing to hide. I'd never felt more myself in my life, and yet it was like I'd walked into a room full of mirrors, only none of them showed me anymore. They brought me down to the station. I wasn't under arrest, they wouldn't say what it was, but they had me sit in this little white room while they ran tests. More prints. Face scans. At one point, a guy in a suit asked me a series of questions. Most were basic: name, date of birth, mother's maiden name. I answered them all without blinking. But he kept staring at me like he was waiting for me to slip. Like I'd suddenly forget how to be who I was. Then they showed me footage from the airport. It was me. No question. Blue hoodie, black duffel bag, limping slightly from an old sprain in my left ankle. Timestamp matched the morning of the crash. I walked in through the main terminal. I waited in line at security. I bought a bottle of water from a kiosk near gate 23. And then, nothing. No footage of me leaving. No record of me boarding a flight. Just a clean break in the timeline, like I'd vanished between one frame and the next. They told me the body they pulled from the wreckage, seat 14A, had DNA that matched mine. 99.8%. Close enough that the tech said, "It's more him than you are." Let that sink in. Corpse is more you than you. The way they looked at me after that, like I was an accident that didn't know it wasn't supposed to happen. I started digging on my own, desperate to make sense of any of it. I went back through old emails, checked my phone's GPS logs, even logged into forums I hadn't visited since college. Somewhere in one of those dusty threads, buried in a conspiracy board that had since been wiped, I found a post. It was full of nonsense, half the words corrupted, but one line stuck out like it had been written just for me. The echo don't belong to either world. I stared at those words for so long my screen dimmed and locked me out. At first, I didn't know what it meant. I still don't. Not exactly. But it was the first time I felt like I wasn't completely alone. Like someone, somewhere, had been through this. Or was this? And then the real weirdness began. That's when the whispering started. Night was the worst. It wasn't like normal nightmares or anything you could just shake off. It started with voices, soft, almost too quiet to hear. At first, I thought I was imagining things, or maybe the stress was messing with me. But they were real. Whispering from the corners of my room, from places no one should be able to hide in. They said things I couldn't make sense of at first. Words like, "you're unmarked," and "we can belong to you." Those phrases twisted in my mind. What did it mean to be unmarked? And who was "we" that could belong to me? Then came the reflections. I looked in the mirror and saw myself, sort of. But not really. These versions were just wrong. Like someone had taken me and messed with the image, leaving glitches and smudges where my face should have been clear. One of them locked eyes with me and didn't look away. Just stared so hard it felt like it was trying to pull something out of me. Another version didn't blink at all. The eyes stayed wide, glassy, unblinking, like something waiting to pounce. I started catching glimpses of them everywhere. Not just mirrors but windows, spoons, even the screen of my phone when it was off. Sometimes they appeared right behind me. I'd turn fast, heart pounding, and find nothing but silence. But the strangest things were the little sensations. Cold breath against the back of my neck when no one was there. Static filling my ears, like an old radio tuned to a station that doesn't exist. Shadows that seemed to breathe, pulsing just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. The air would shift in a room like it had weight, like something unseen was pressing close. I wasn't just haunted. It felt worse than that. Like I was being hunted. Like whatever was whispering, watching, breathing down my neck, they wanted more than just to scare me. They wanted to be me. And I could feel it, deep inside, that this was only the beginning. I was desperate for answers, so I kept digging. That's when I stumbled onto a forgotten corner of the internet. A tiny web page hidden behind layers of broken links and dead forums. It looked like someone's personal archive, full of old scans from a worn, yellow journal or maybe an occult book. The pages were brittle, filled with handwriting so faded it almost looked like a dream. That's where I first saw the words, "The Echoed." According to those pages, the Echoed weren't just ghosts or spirits, they were something else entirely. Souls overlooked, misplaced, or simply misfiled by death itself. They weren't meant to be here anymore, but they hadn't crossed over either. They existed in this strange in-between, trapped between being alive and dead, caught in some kind of limbo nobody talked about. Then there were the unwept, souls that had been forgotten without ceremony or name. They clung to the fragments of their identity, desperate not to be erased completely. These were the ones who haunted me. They weren't content to drift in silence. Instead, they sought a way back, a way to slip in and take over a life that still had a heartbeat. The Echoed were the bait. Because they weren't truly alive, and they weren't truly dead, they were vulnerable. The unwept saw them as an opening, a door left unlocked. If an unwept could latch onto an Echoed, they could cross the boundary, find a way back to the living world by stealing a life not fully claimed. It was a trap, and I was stuck right in the middle of it. Then came the last, chilling piece of the puzzle. The journal didn't just describe the problem. It hinted at the solution. There was only one way to fix it, the note said. Only one way to keep the unwept from tearing you apart from the inside. You have to give them someone else to take. After that, nothing felt real anymore. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the shadows in my room crept closer, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. Food lost its taste, and I stopped caring if I ate at all. Mirrors, those damn mirrors, turned into instruments of betrayal. They no longer showed me my own face. Instead, I saw versions of me that were wrong, hollow, like someone had erased the life behind my eyes. Worse still, my wife started to forget things. Little things at first, the way I took my coffee, the name of my favorite band. But it quickly grew. She mixed up stories we'd lived together. She looked through old photo albums and frowned, telling me faces had changed or disappeared. Our past was slipping away, rewriting itself without me. It was like I was fading, becoming less real with every passing day. Desperation pushed me to leave the house. I needed something solid, something undeniable. I ended up at a bus station late at night, watching people come and go. That's where I saw him, a man no one seemed to notice, slouched against a cold bench. He was broken, forgotten in a way I recognized all too well. I don't know why, but I walked over and offered him a smile, some kindness. A little attention. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. And just like that, I made him visible again. He looked up at me with tired eyes, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd done something right. But then I felt it, the weight of eyes I couldn't see. They were watching us. Hovering close. I could feel them shifting, considering. Maybe thinking of taking him instead of me. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew. Then something caught my eye, a reflection in the glass of the vending machine beside us. It was me. Or so it should have been. But the reflection smiled. A cold, twisted smile that didn't belong to me. I looked down at my own face and realized I wasn't smiling at all. Since that night at the bus station, the whispering stopped. At least, I haven't heard it again. The silence is unsettling. It's like the world has paused, but I'm still stuck somewhere in between. I blink slower now, as if time itself drags against me. Food has lost all meaning. It's just something I put in my mouth because I'm supposed to, not because I want to. My wife still calls my name, but her eyes hold something new, something I can't quite read. She looks at me in a way that feels distant, as if she's searching for a stranger where I used to be. I keep asking myself what this all means. Did I win? Did I fight off whatever was trying to steal my life? Or did it slip past me anyway, quietly taking my place without anyone noticing? Sometimes, when I catch my reflection, there's a flicker of doubt. A flicker that makes me wonder if I'm still really me, or just an echo of who I used to be. 3 weeks ago, I was declared dead. And maybe they weren't wrong. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Have you ever felt like you weren't supposed to be here? Let me know in the comments what you think really happened to me, or if it even was me by the end. Subscribe for more stories like this one, if you're sure you're still alive. I've had the same dream for 26 years. The same little girl. The same house fire. The same scream. But last night, the dream didn't end. It kept going. And when I woke up, my house was burning. What do you think it means? And while you're here, type in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? It started when I was 10. One of those dry, blue sky summer afternoons, the kind you wish you could bottle up and keep forever. We were at the local splash pad, the one just off Main Street, where the rubber ground always smelled like wet tires, and the fountains came up out of nowhere like the sidewalk itself was playing tricks on you. I remember the sunburned shoulders, sticky popsicle fingers, and my dad walking around with his old camcorder, filming everything like we were making a movie instead of just trying to cool off. I was running through the sprays with my friends, shrieking and flinching at every burst of cold water. My swimsuit clung to me like a second skin, and the air was thick with sunscreen and hot asphalt. Then I stopped. Just stopped. I remember the moment like someone hit pause on everything. The laughter around me dropped away, and the noise faded into a kind of low ringing in my ears. She was standing still in the middle of it all. A little girl. Completely still. Not laughing. Not soaked. She didn't seem part of the chaos. Her hair was dark and matted down like it was wet, but not from the fountains. Her dress looked old. Not old-fashioned, just worn. And her skin, it was blistered, like someone had taken a lighter to her arms and legs and then left her that way. No one else noticed her. Kids ran right past her, water shooting up around her feet, but she never flinched. She just stared straight ahead. Not at me. Not at anything. I must have stood there too long, because the next thing I knew, my dad was calling my name. He had the camera up, still filming. He thought I was getting too much sun or maybe starting to feel faint. I didn't say anything. Just shook it off and ran back toward the fountains like I was trying to lose whatever I had just seen. Later that night, I told my mom about it. I didn't mean to. I think she could tell something was off, and she asked the kind of quiet questions moms ask when they already know the answers. When I told her about the girl, about how burned she looked, she didn't laugh or say I'd imagined it. She just got this look on her face I'd never seen before, like she was doing math in her head, fast and private. Then she told me something strange. Something she said her grandmother once told her when she was a child. That our family, on her side, had always been a little sensitive. Her word, not mine. She said some people are born with skin just thin enough to catch glimpses of things most folks never see. That it wasn't anything to worry about. That it would pass. I didn't tell her, but I didn't want it to pass. I just wanted to know why no one else saw her. Because I saw her. And years later, I'd see her again. The first night it happened, I thought it was just a dream. One of those vivid, too real ones that hang on you all day like humidity. But this one felt different from the start. I wasn't me. I was someone else. A man named Kyle. A firefighter. I remember the weight of the gear first. Heavy, like my bones were wrapped in wet towels and bricks. My shoulders ached from it. I could feel sweat dripping down my back inside the suit. The oxygen mask pressed against my face like a second skull. I didn't question who I was or what I was doing. I just was. And I knew I had a job to do. The radio on my shoulder crackled with static, then a voice. 322 James Street. Child trapped. Second floor. My boots thudded hard on the steps as I pushed into the building. The smoke hit me like a wall. Thick. Bitter. It clawed its way into the mask. I knew the layout. Somehow, I knew every inch of that house. The hall. The room at the end. The girl. She was hiding in the closet. Curled up, arms over her head, but she wasn't crying. Just sitting there, breathing fast and shallow like a little animal. I scooped her up. She looked straight at me, eyes wide, no burns, no blood. Just scared. She clutched my collar like she knew me. And for a second, I felt this recognition. Not from me. From her. We made it to the hallway before the floor gave a deep groan. It sounded like the house was exhaling. Then the ceiling caved in. Flames. Everywhere. Like they'd been waiting for us. I tried to shield her. I remember the heat punching through the gear. My arms wouldn't move. My legs gave out. She screamed once. And then everything went white. I woke up screaming. But here's the thing. The dream didn't end there. It didn't stop. Night after night, 4 years, the same dream replayed. Same building. Same smoke. Same unbearable heat. And always her. The girl. In the closet. Eyes wide. Silent. The way she'd cling to me like she knew what was coming. I'd carry her through the burning hallway. I'd get as far as the stairwell. And then the ceiling would give out. Every single time, we died together. I tried everything to stop it. Changed my routines. Moved bedrooms. Slept on the floor. Slept on the couch. Didn't matter. The moment I closed my eyes, I was back in that suit. Back in Kyle's body. I don't know when it turned into an obsession, but I remember how it started. I began reading about house fires. Real ones. Accidents. Arsons. I'd look up floor plans of old homes, especially ones built in the 60s. I'd stay up late tracing escape routes on graph paper like I could somehow rewrite the ending. I memorized smoke temperatures, flashover points, pressure thresholds. I started dreaming of it while I was awake. I drank so much caffeine just to keep from sleeping, I ended up in the ER with chest pains. The doctor told me to rest. I wanted to laugh in his face. I saw therapists. Plural. Some wanted to talk about trauma. Others blamed video games. One asked if I'd lost a child. I hadn't. But it started to feel like I had. I talked to a priest. I wasn't even religious. He blessed the house anyway. It didn't help. I even tracked down a psychic. She smelled like dust and sage. She held my hand and went quiet for a long time before pulling away. She said something about unfinished paths and souls that remember. Then she refused to see me again. Only my mother believed me. She didn't need convincing. She said it ran in the blood. That same thing her grandmother told her when she was a kid. Some people carry the past with them, even when it's not theirs. I used to think I was dreaming as Kyle. Now I wasn't so sure. I started thinking in his voice. I knew things I shouldn't have known, what it feels like to break through drywall with an axe, how to read the angle of a flame, how flesh smells when it cooks too long. It wasn't just sleep. It was leaking. And then, one night, something changed. The fire was the same. The steps. The smoke. The girl. But when I lifted her up and turned to run, she didn't clutch my collar this time. She looked up at me with a face full of knowing. No fear. Just cold awareness. After that night, the one where she called me a liar, everything started to shift. The dreams didn't follow the usual track anymore. There were little changes at first. Barely noticeable. The fire still burned the same. The ceiling still collapsed. But the girl, she stopped crying. That part hit me harder than I expected. I was used to the tears, the way she'd scream, the sound of her coughing through the smoke. It hurt every time. But when she stopped, it was worse. It was like she knew something I didn't. Like she wasn't afraid of the fire anymore. She just watched me. Every time I picked her up, she looked me dead in the eyes. There was no panic in her. No clinging. Just this stillness that made the flames feel cold. I could feel her breathing, steady and slow, while I was losing my mind trying to get us out. And every time I glanced down at her, I felt like she was seeing through me. Then came the second shift. I noticed it one night while trying to radio for backup. My voice was the same. The same desperate shouting over the crackling. But when I looked down at my jacket, the name tag wasn't Kyle anymore. It was mine. My actual name. Clear as day. Black letters stitched into the soot-stained fabric. And suddenly I wasn't just dreaming in his body. I wasn't watching Kyle. I was me. Wearing that gear. Fighting that fire. Holding her. Burning with her. I remember standing there, holding her hand, feeling the floor shake, and thinking, I'm not sleeping through this. I'm being pulled into it. Or maybe I was never dreaming at all. Maybe I was remembering something that hadn't happened yet. Then, it got worse. In one of the dreams, we made it further than usual. I don't even know how. The ceiling held. The staircase didn't cave. I could see the door ahead, glowing from the outside light. And she was still quiet, but her eyes, they were locked on the door like she'd been waiting for it. We got to the front of the house. I reached for the handle. But she got there first. She turned it slowly, didn't even flinch at the heat of the metal. And when she opened the door, I saw it. Not the front yard. Not a street. Not the fire truck. Or neighbors. Or sirens. It was my bedroom. My actual bedroom. Same posters. Same unmade bed. Same socks on the floor. Same fan rattling above. She turned to me, still holding my hand. And she smiled. After the door opened to my bedroom, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I stayed up with the lights on, my back against the wall, jumping at every creak in the floorboards. But eventually, exhaustion won. And that's when it started bleeding into the real world. One morning, I woke up coughing. Deep, dry, smoke-heavy coughing that left a sharp sting in my chest. My room smelled like burnt wood. I don't mean a faint trace. I mean it hit me like I'd spent the night next to a campfire. I threw back the covers, and my sheets were damp with sweat and coated in this thin, gray layer of ash. I rubbed my pillow, and it smeared like charcoal on my fingers. I didn't even own a fireplace. I washed everything 3 times. Opened every window. Blamed it on my imagination. Maybe I sleepwalked. Maybe it was dust. Maybe I just needed air. But then it got worse. A few days later, I stepped outside to clear my head. The air felt heavy, like rain was coming, even though the sky was clear. I looked down the street and froze. The street sign at the end of the block. The one that had always read, Oak Ridge. It didn't anymore. It said, James St. I just stood there for a minute, like my brain was trying to catch up to what my eyes already knew. I walked toward it, touched the pole. It was real. New paint. New letters. No sign of vandalism. I asked my neighbor if they'd noticed the change. He just looked at me like I was joking and said, "It's always been James." I walked back home fast, heart racing. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I stepped onto the porch. That's when I saw the number. Painted in white, right across my black mailbox, 322. Big, uneven numbers. Fresh. Still a little tacky to the touch. I didn't paint it. I hadn't touched that box in weeks. I grabbed a cloth and tried scrubbing it off. It wouldn't budge. I used everything. Water, cleaner, even sandpaper. Nothing. The numbers stayed, like they belonged there. I told myself to calm down. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe a neighbor's kid. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe. But then, I heard it. A siren. Faint at first. Distant. It got closer. Louder. Until it was right outside. I opened the front door. And a fire truck was pulling up to my house. I ran outside, half expecting it to be a mistake. A wrong address. Some kind of emergency drill. I was ready to shout at someone, to demand an answer, anything that would make it all feel normal again. But then I saw who stepped off the truck. It was me. Full gear. Helmet. Gloves. Everything. The suit was scorched in places, soot-streaked, just like in the dream. And I was walking straight toward my house with a kind of purpose that didn't allow for confusion. No hesitation. Just a slow, steady march. Like this had already happened and he was just following through. I didn't move. Couldn't speak. And then I saw her. She was standing right there on my porch. That same girl. The one from the splash pad. The one I carried out of the burning house again and again, night after night. But this time she wasn't screaming. She wasn't reaching for help. She was just standing there. Burned. Skin blistered, clothes melted to her frame. Smiling. That smile was wrong. It didn't belong on a face like that. It was too calm. Too aware. Like she knew something I didn't, and had all the time in the world to wait for me to figure it out. I looked back at the house. The windows were glowing orange. Flames flickered behind the glass. Not roaring, not yet, but enough to paint the curtains in movement. Enough to throw dancing shadows across the inside walls. My walls. I started backing up. Or at least I thought I did. But I didn't move. My legs wouldn't lift. My heels dug into the porch like they'd grown roots. I told myself to run, to scream, to wake up, but nothing happened. I just stood there. A prisoner in my own body, stuck in a moment that felt too real to be a dream and too impossible to be anything else. And then she moved. She didn't walk. She stepped forward, slowly, and leaned in. I could feel the heat coming off her skin. Smell the smoke in her hair. And this time, she didn't speak in the dream. She whispered it in my ear. "You never saved me." Everything went black. No noise. No light. Just the thick kind of emptiness that doesn't feel like rest. It feels like forgetting. Not peaceful. Just gone. Then I opened my eyes. But I wasn't in bed. I didn't feel the sheets. I didn't see the ceiling fan or the alarm clock or the faint glow from the hallway nightlight I always left on, just in case. I was standing. And I was already dressed. Helmet strapped tight. Jacket heavy on my shoulders. Gloves tugged over my fingers. The axe was in my hand. I was gripping it like I'd been holding it for hours. Like it was part of me now. Smoke curled around my face, thick and stinging. It clung to the back of my throat. It rolled across the floor, hugged the walls, crawled toward the ceiling in lazy waves. I turned my head, slowly, and I knew this place. I always knew it. The wallpaper, the photos, the cracked tile under my boots. It was the same house. The one from every dream. Every fire. Every time I died. And I could hear her. Upstairs. That same cry. That same high, breathless voice, breaking between sobs. I didn't say anything. I didn't call out or try the radio or tell myself to wake up. There wasn't a point anymore. I wasn't dreaming. Not this time. This wasn't another night where I jolt awake soaked in sweat with my heart punching my ribs. This wasn't some memory stitched together by a tired brain. This was now. I took one step forward. Then another. The floor groaned like it always did. I passed the same scorched pictures, the same broken light fixture. And I thought about all the nights I'd run through this hallway, trying to get to her before it collapsed. All the ways I'd failed. All the times I'd burned. But this felt different. Heavier. Final. Like there was no reset waiting on the other side. I reached the stairs. The crying stopped. Dead silence. Not even the fire made a sound. And suddenly I knew what was coming. I didn't know how. I didn't know why. But it settled in my gut like cold lead. Tonight wasn't a story. It wasn't a loop. Tonight, I wasn't waking up again. Tonight, I think I die for real. I've had the same dream for 26 years. And last night, I stopped waking up. What do you think really happened to her? Was she real, or was I? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever had a dream that bled into real life, don't ignore it.